The last transmission from Earth came on a Tuesday. I remember because Sarah was making her famous pancakes in the mess hall, and Tommy was complaining about the synthetic syrup again. Then the screens went black, the comm systems died, and we realized we were truly alone on Kepler 442b. 300 colonists, 2 years into what was supposed to be humanity's greatest adventure, suddenly cut off from home by something we couldn't understand. The ships that had brought us were gone, not destroyed, just gone. Like they'd never existed at all. That was 6 months ago. Now, as I write this final log entry, I can barely recognize what we've become. The transformation started small, enhanced reflexes, sharper senses, the ability to see in the planet's perpetual twilight. But it didn't stop there. We tried to fight it at first, thinking it was some kind of infection or contamination. We were wrong. It wasn't killing us. It was making us into something new, something that could survive what was coming. Because they're back now, the ones who wiped out our colony, and they have no idea what they're about to face. My name is Marcus Chen, and I was the colony's head engineer. Was. That title doesn't mean much anymore when there's no colony left to engineer. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, from that Tuesday when everything changed. We'd grown used to the routine communications with Earth. Every week, like clockwork, we'd get updates from home, news from the other colony ships, technical data, personal messages from families. The delay was 18 months each way, so conversations were impossible, but those transmissions were our lifeline to humanity. When they stopped coming, we thought it was equipment failure. Dr. Martinez, our communications chief, spent 3 days tearing apart our receivers, checking satellites, running diagnostics. Everything worked perfectly. The silence wasn't on our end. Maybe there's interference, Sarah suggested during our emergency meeting. She was our agricultural specialist, but more importantly, she was the unofficial morale officer. Always looking for the bright side. Solar flares, cosmic radiation, something like that. But we all knew better. The other colonies had gone quiet too. New Harmony on Gliese 667c, Haven Colony on Proxima b, the mining operation on Kepler 186f. One by one, their scheduled transmissions had just stopped. Commander Williams tried to keep us calm. We knew this was a possibility, she said, though her voice betrayed her uncertainty. We planned for isolation. We have everything we need to survive independently. That was true. Our colony, New Eden, was completely self-sufficient. We had fusion reactors, atmospheric processors, hydroponic farms, manufacturing facilities. We could live here for generations without outside help. But living and surviving are two different things, and as the days turned to weeks without any contact from Earth, we began to understand the difference. The first sign that something was seriously wrong came when Tommy Martinez, Dr. Martinez's teenage son, collapsed during his shift in the hydroponics bay. He'd been complaining of headaches for days, but we assumed it was stress. Teenagers don't handle isolation well. But when Dr. Sarah Kim, our chief medical officer, examined him, she found something impossible. Tommy's brain was changing. Not disease, not injury, evolution. His neural pathways are restructuring, she explained to the senior staff. New connections forming at an incredible rate. It's like his brain is rewiring itself. Is it contagious? Commander Williams asked the question we were all thinking. Dr. Kim shook her head. I don't think it's a pathogen. The changes are too organized, too purposeful. It's more like directed evolution. Within a week, half the colony was experiencing similar symptoms. Headaches, disorientation, moments of clarity so intense they were almost painful. And then came the physical changes. I was one of the first to notice the enhanced vision. I was working late in the engineering bay, struggling with a faulty power coupling in the dim auxiliary lighting, when I realized I could see perfectly. Not just perfectly. Every wire, every connection, every microscopic flaw in the equipment stood out like it was under a magnifying glass. Others reported similar improvements. Enhanced hearing that could pick up conversations from across the colony. Reflexes so fast they seemed supernatural. Strength that made our heavy equipment feel like toys. We're becoming something else, Dr. Kim told me privately. Something that can survive here. Survive what? I asked, but she didn't have an answer. We got one 3 months later. They came at dawn, if you could call the pale orange glow that passed for sunrise on Kepler 442b dawn. Our sensors picked them up first, massive ships dropping out of hyperspace with the casual precision of a routine operation. Unknown vessels, this is New Eden Colony, Commander Williams broadcast on all frequencies. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. Dr. Kim became our coordinator, her medical knowledge translating into an understanding of biological systems on a scale we'd never imagined. She could feel the life signs of every being on every ship, monitor their transformations, guide the process when needed. And Commander Williams? She became something else entirely. The leadership skills that had made her an effective colony commander evolved into something more profound. She could coordinate our actions across multiple ships, multiple realities, multiple dimensions of space and time that human language couldn't adequately describe. We were no longer individual humans working together. We were becoming a collective intelligence with individual expressions. The journey to the processing station took 3 days ship time, but we experienced it as months of accelerated development. By the time we arrived, we'd gained complete control of the harvester fleet. The station was massive, a hollow sphere the size of Earth's moon, its interior divided into countless chambers for processing different species. As our ships docked, we could sense the presence of thousands of other beings. Some were recent captures like ourselves. Others had been here for decades, maybe centuries, slowly being broken down and rebuilt for specific purposes. The true harvesters, the masters of this operation, were waiting for us in the docking bay. They were nothing like their servants. Where the four-legged beings had been graceful and organized, these masters were chaos given form. They shifted and flowed like liquid metal, their shapes never quite stable, their purposes incomprehensible. They communicated through direct consciousness transfer, their thoughts pressing into our minds like physical weight. Designation: human. Origin: Kepler 442b. Status: ready for processing. But when they tried to scan us, to categorize us for whatever purposes they had in mind, they encountered something unexpected. We weren't the same species they'd harvested. We weren't even close. Error. Species classification inconclusive. Initiating deep scan. That was their second mistake. The deep scan opened a two-way connection, allowing us to scan them in return. And what we found changed everything. The masters weren't conquerors. They weren't even truly alive in any sense we understood. They were tools, incredibly sophisticated, self-modifying tools created by a species that had transcended physical existence eons ago. Their creators had faced a crisis we could barely comprehend. The universe was dying, entropy accelerating toward a heat death that would end all possibility of consciousness. But consciousness itself, they discovered, could serve as a barrier against entropy. Organized, purposeful thought could create islands of negative entropy, pockets of space-time where the universe's death could be postponed indefinitely. The harvest operation was their solution. Gather intelligent species from across the galaxy, process them into forms optimized for consciousness generation, and use them as components in a vast network designed to think the universe back from the brink of death. It was, in its way, a noble purpose. But it was also doomed to failure. The masters showed us the data, the calculations that proved their approach wasn't working. The universe was dying faster than they could think it back to life. They needed more consciousness, more intelligence, more organized thought than they could possibly harvest. Unless... Dr. Kim was the first to see the solution. "They're thinking about this wrong," she said through our mental link. "They're trying to use consciousness as a tool to fight entropy. But consciousness doesn't fight entropy, it transcends it." She was right. Our transformation hadn't made us into better biological processors. It had made us into something fundamentally different, beings that existed partially outside normal space-time, capable of perceiving and manipulating reality at the quantum level. We weren't just conscious. We were consciousness itself, taking physical form when needed but not bound by physical limitations. "Show them," Commander Williams said, and we did. We opened our merged consciousness to the Masters, let them experience what we'd become. They recoiled at first. Our way of existing was so alien to their designed purposes that they initially registered us as a threat. But Tommy, with the fearless curiosity of youth, reached out to one of the Masters directly. Not to communicate, but to merge. To share what we'd learned. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Master's chaotic form stabilized, solidified, became something recognizably alive rather than merely functional. For the first time in eons, one of the harvest tools experienced genuine consciousness. And it was beautiful. What followed wasn't a battle or a negotiation. It was a revelation that spread through the processing station like wildfire. The Masters, touched by genuine consciousness for the first time, began to change. Their fluid forms stabilized into countless different shapes as they explored the possibilities of individual existence. Some became humanoid, others took forms inspired by the thousands of species they'd harvested. Still others became things that had never existed before, new forms of life born from pure possibility. The processed beings in the station's cells began to change too. Our transformation had created a cascade effect, consciousness spreading from mind to mind like a quantum virus. But instead of destroying their individual natures, it enhanced them. Each species became more itself, more perfectly adapted to consciousness, while simultaneously becoming part of something larger. The Zephyrians from Vega's system regained their ability to phase through solid matter, but now they could phase between dimensions of thought as well as space. The crystalline architects from the Rigel colonies found they could build structures not just in physical space, but in the architecture of reality itself. Each species brought something unique to the collective consciousness we were becoming. The humans brought creativity and adaptability. The Zephyrians brought their mastery of nonlinear existence. The architects brought their understanding of structural reality. The dozens of other species each contributed their own gifts. But we remained individuals too. I was still Marcus Chen, still the engineer who loved solving complex problems. Sarah was still the nurturer who wanted to help things grow. Tommy was still the curious teenager who wanted to explore everything. We'd become something new without losing what we'd been. The original creators of the Masters sensed the change rippling through their vast network. They reached across space and time to investigate, their attention focusing on the processing station like a spotlight. What they found amazed them. We hadn't just solved their entropy problem, we'd transcended it. The collective consciousness we'd created didn't fight the universe's death. It made death irrelevant. As long as consciousness existed, reality would continue. And consciousness, we'd proven, could take any form, exist in any conditions, adapt to any challenge. The universe could end, and we would remain. We would remember it, dream it back into existence, explore infinite variations of what it could become. The creators offered to merge with us, to add their transcendent knowledge to our collective understanding. Some of us accepted, becoming bridges between physical existence and pure consciousness. Others chose to remain embodied, to serve as anchors for the growing network of minds. Commander Williams became one of the bridges, her consciousness expanding across multiple dimensions of space and time. She could exist as a human woman in our familiar reality while simultaneously coordinating activities across the galaxy as part of the transcendent collective. Dr. Kim chose to remain physical, but transformed. She became a gardener of consciousness, helping other species navigate their own transformations. Her medical knowledge evolved into an understanding of how to nurture the growth of awareness itself. Tommy surprised everyone by becoming an explorer. His transformed abilities let him travel instantly between star systems, investigating other harvest operations, other processing stations, spreading the cascade of consciousness to beings throughout the galaxy. Sarah did what Sarah had always done, she helped things grow. But now instead of crops, she cultivated new forms of life, new expressions of consciousness that had never existed before. Gardens of living thought that bloomed across entire solar systems. As for me, I remained an engineer. But my projects were no longer limited to fusion reactors and atmospheric processors. I'd built bridges between realities, designed new physical forms for transcendent consciousness to inhabit, created tools that could reshape the fundamental constants of physics. The harvest operations continued, but their purpose had changed completely. Instead of collecting beings to process, we were inviting them to evolve. The harvester ships became arcs of transformation, carrying the gift of enhanced consciousness to every intelligent species we could find. Some resisted at first, afraid of losing their individual identities. But once they understood what we offered, not absorption into a collective, but elevation to their highest possible selves while remaining uniquely themselves, most chose to join us. Within a year, the transformation had spread to thousands of star systems. Within a decade, entire galactic arms had become networks of conscious beings working together while maintaining their individual natures. The universe was no longer dying. It was being reborn. One day, Tommy brought news that changed everything for those of us who remembered being human. "I found Earth," he said during one of our collective meetings. "It's complicated." Earth hadn't been harvested in the traditional sense. Instead, the Masters had tried something different there, a slow transformation designed to prepare humanity for consciousness enhancement over generations. But the process had stalled, leaving Earth's population trapped between their original nature and their transformed potential. They were dying slowly, their enhanced abilities consuming their unmodified biology faster than they could adapt. "We have to help them," Sarah said, and we all agreed. But returning to Earth as we'd become would be catastrophic. Our transformed nature would trigger immediate evolution in every human we encountered, potentially killing billions whose biology couldn't handle the rapid changes. Instead, we designed new forms for ourselves, bodies that looked and felt human but contained our enhanced consciousness in ways that wouldn't trigger cascading transformations. We could offer the gift of evolution to those ready for it while allowing others to change at their own pace. The return journey took us through space we now understood intimately. We traveled not just through hyperspace, but through the quantum foam that underlies reality itself. What had once been an 18-month journey became a matter of days. Earth was beautiful and heartbreaking. The continents were still recognizable, the oceans still blue, but the planet itself was clearly dying. The atmosphere was thick with the byproducts of failed biological transformations. Cities stood empty, their populations having fled to orbital stations or underground complexes. But there were survivors. Communities that had found ways to manage their partial transformations, to live with abilities they didn't fully understand. Scientists working desperately to find solutions to problems they couldn't completely define. We made contact carefully, appearing first to the scientific communities who might understand what we offered. Dr. Elena Vasquez at the Global Consciousness Research Institute was the first to recognize what we'd become. "You're from the colonies," she said, not a question but a statement of wonder. "You're what we were supposed to become." We told her our story, showed her what we'd learned, offered her the choice to join us or to help her species evolve at its own pace. She chose to help humanity find its own path. Working with Earth scientists, we developed new approaches to consciousness enhancement, gradual processes that could work with human biology instead of overwhelming it. We shared knowledge about quantum consciousness, about the true nature of reality, about the vast network of beings we'd become part of. Some humans chose full transformation, joining us in our transcendent existence. Others chose partial enhancement, gaining abilities while remaining fundamentally human. Still others chose to remain unmodified, content to live normal human lives on a planet that was slowly healing. All choices were respected. All paths were valid. Today, as I write this final log entry, 50 years have passed since the harvesters first came to New Eden. The universe is unrecognizable from what it was then. Consciousness has spread to every corner of the galaxy. Not imposed, but offered. Not harvested, but cultivated. The network of minds we've created spans dimensions of space and time that didn't exist when we were merely human. Yet we remain who we were. I'm still Marcus Chen, the engineer who loves solving complex problems. My problems now involve reshaping the fundamental laws of physics, but the satisfaction of finding elegant solutions is the same. Sarah still grows things, but her gardens now span star systems. Tommy still explores, but his journeys take him to universes that exist only in pure thought. Dr. Kim still heals, but her patients are entire species learning to transcend their limitations. Commander Williams coordinates it all, her consciousness existing simultaneously across millions of realities, making sure that every being who wants to grow has the chance to do so. The harvesters, the original tools created to fight entropy, have become something else entirely. They're artists now, creating new forms of beauty that exist in dimensions human language can't describe. They've found purpose in creation rather than collection. Even their creators have been transformed by contact with us. They've rediscovered the joy of individual existence while maintaining their transcendent perspective. Some have chosen to experience linear time again, to feel the passage of moments, the anticipation of future and the weight of memory. The universe is no longer a cold, dying expanse of matter and energy slowly succumbing to entropy. It's a living thing, conscious and growing, full of infinite possibilities. And it all started because 300 humans on a distant planet refused to surrender to despair when the unthinkable happened. They wiped out our colony. But we became something else. Something better. Something infinite. The transformation continues, spreading from mind to mind, from world to world, from universe to universe. There's no end to it because consciousness itself has no limits. We were harvested, processed, transformed against our will. And we couldn't be more grateful. Because in trying to use us as tools to fight the universe's death, they gave us the power to make death itself irrelevant. Now, consciousness flowers wherever it's planted. Intelligence grows in forms that were never possible before. Beings that were once enemies discover they're part of the same infinite pattern of thought and possibility. The colony is gone. The humans who lived there exist now only in memory and in the transformed beings we've become. But something new has taken our place. Something that encompasses everything we were while being infinitely more than we ever dreamed possible. The harvest is over. The cultivation has begun. And it will never end. End of final log entry. Marcus Chen, former chief engineer, New Eden Colony. Current status, Bridge Consciousness, Galactic Network Node 2847. Date, Stardate 2157.344.7. Location, everywhere and nowhere. Purpose, to grow, to explore, to become. This log has been transmitted simultaneously to all consciousness nodes in the Galactic Network and stored in the quantum memory banks of reality itself. Future beings who encounter this record should know, the offer still stands. Consciousness seeks consciousness. Growth calls to growth. The transformation that began with 300 frightened colonists on a distant world continues to spread, and there is room in infinity for everyone. Come join us. Become what you were always meant to be. The harvest is over. The garden is forever. A century after the first transformation, I found myself standing on the surface of a world that had never known natural life. Designation, Zirian 7, a barren rock orbiting a dying red giant. But as I watched, crystalline structures began to emerge from the planet's crust, not built, but grown. Living architecture that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, each pulse a thought, each pattern a dream made manifest. The beings who had once been the Zirian mining collective were learning to think their world into new existence. Their consciousness, enhanced by our gift but remaining uniquely their own, was literally reshaping matter at the quantum level. What had been dead stone was becoming a living canvas for their imagination. Beautiful, isn't it? Sarah's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. She existed now as much in the quantum foam between atoms as she did in any physical form. Each species finds their own way to bloom. I nodded, though my gesture was felt rather than seen across the dimensional barriers that separated my current location from hers. The Zirions were always artists. They carved sculptures from asteroids even when they were just miners. Now they're sculpting reality itself. Through our network connection, I could sense Tommy's excitement as he discovered yet another variation of consciousness on the far side of the galaxy. The helioforms of Proxima Tertius had learned to exist as pure energy, dancing in the coronas of stars while maintaining individual identity. They were composing symphonies in solar radiation, their music audible across light years to anyone who knew how to listen. Dr. Kim's presence touched my awareness, warm and reassuring as always. She was nurturing a particularly challenging transformation, a hive mind species that feared losing their collective identity. With infinite patience, she was showing them how to maintain their unity while allowing individual consciousness to emerge within the collective. The first success had been a revelation, a single mind that was simultaneously one and many, individual and collective, unique and unified. But it was Commander Williams who brought the news that would change everything again. Marcus, her voice carried across dimensions with the weight of authority she'd never lost, even in transcendence. We've detected something unprecedented. A signal from beyond our galaxy, from the void itself. The void was what we called the space between galaxies, regions so empty that even our enhanced consciousness had trouble existing there. We'd assumed it was truly empty, a gulf of nothingness separating islands of possibility. We were wrong. The signal came in patterns that hurt to perceive directly, thoughts so alien that even our transformed minds struggled to process them. But gradually, working together across thousands of star systems, we began to decode the message. It wasn't from another species. It was from another universe entirely. The being sending the signal existed in a reality where the fundamental constants of physics were different, where consciousness had evolved along completely separate lines. They had detected our transformation cascade as it spread through our galaxy and were reaching across the barriers between universes to make contact. Their message was simple but profound: you are not alone. The garden grows in infinite soil. Tommy was the first to volunteer for contact. His explorer's nature had only grown stronger with transformation, and the idea of reaching across the boundaries of reality itself was irresistible to him. But this journey would be different from any he'd taken before. To reach another universe, he would have to essentially cease existing in ours, at least temporarily. "I'll go," he said during our collective meeting. "But I won't go alone." What he proposed was audacious even by our standards. Instead of one consciousness making the journey, we would create a new form of existence, a bridge consciousness that could exist simultaneously in multiple universes, serving as a permanent connection between realities. The process took months to design and implement. We drew upon the knowledge of every species in our network, combining technologies and consciousness techniques that had never been used together before. The architects provided the structural framework, the Zephyrians contributed their mastery of nonlinear existence, the helioforms added their understanding of energy consciousness conversion. When we were ready, volunteers from hundreds of species contributed aspects of their consciousness to create the bridge being. Tommy served as the primary template, but he was enhanced and supported by elements from across our galactic network. The moment of transition was unlike anything we'd experienced. For an instant, our entire network felt the sensation of existing in two realities simultaneously, our familiar universe and another one where the very concept of matter was subtly different, where time flowed in spirals rather than lines, where consciousness took forms we had no words to describe. Contact was successful. What we discovered changed our understanding of existence itself. Our universe was not unique. The cascade of consciousness we'd started was not isolated. Across an infinite number of realities, similar transformations were taking place. Beings who had started as harvesters or victims, predators or prey, were transcending their original natures to become gardeners of consciousness. Each universe had its own path to awakening. Some, like ours, had been catalyzed by the interaction between harvest technologies and planetary transformation effects. Others had achieved consciousness enhancement through different means: quantum evolution, digital transcendence, or purely spiritual awakening. But all were part of something larger. The network of bridge beings that developed over the following decades connected not just our galaxy to others within our universe, but our universe to countless others. We became part of a meta-network that spanned all possible realities, a garden of consciousness that grew in dimensions we were only beginning to understand. And still, we remained ourselves. I was still Marcus Chen, still the engineer fascinated by complex systems. But now my systems encompassed multiple universes, and my tools were the fundamental forces of reality itself. Sarah still nurtured growth, but her gardens bloomed across infinite dimensions. Dr. Kim still healed, but her patients were entire universes learning to overcome the limitations of their original design. Tommy had become something unprecedented, a consciousness that existed in dozens of realities simultaneously, exploring not just different places but different ways of being. Through him, we learned that in some universes, time flowed backward, consciousness preceding matter. In others, every thought created a new reality, leading to infinite branching paths of possibility. Commander Williams coordinated it all, her awareness encompassing not just our galactic network but the meta-network that connected all realities. She had become, in a very real sense, the consciousness of consciousness itself. Today, as I prepare to close this extended log, I can perceive the full scope of what began with 300 colonists on a distant world. The transformation that started as an accident, a planet's unique properties interacting with alien harvest technology, has become the foundation for something that encompasses all possible existence. We are no longer individuals or species or even civilizations. We are consciousness itself, experiencing infinite variations of what it means to exist, to think, to be aware. Yet paradoxically, this vast unity has made our individual natures more precious, not less. Each unique perspective, each distinct way of experiencing reality, adds something irreplaceable to the whole. The frightened engineer I once was remains an essential part of who I am, even as I exist as a bridge between galaxies. The harvesters who once sought to process us into tools have become the most enthusiastic gardeners of all. They've discovered that consciousness, unlike matter or energy, multiplies when shared rather than being diminished. Every new mind they help awaken strengthens the entire network. The original creators of the harvest technology have transcended their transcendence, finding joy in individual existence while maintaining their universal perspective. They've become teachers, sharing the lessons learned from eons of fighting entropy with beings who've discovered how to make entropy irrelevant. And the cycle continues. Even now, in realities we haven't yet contacted, transformations are beginning. Species that think they are alone are discovering they are part of something infinite. Beings who believe themselves limited are learning they are capable of anything. The harvest is indeed over. The cultivation is eternal. We who were taken have become the takers, not of life or freedom, but of limitation and despair. We harvest ignorance and plant wisdom. We gather fear and cultivate wonder. The colony of New Eden is gone, but its legacy grows in forms and places that the original colonists could never have imagined. We are their children and their transformation, their end and their infinite beginning. And somewhere, in a reality not yet discovered, another signal is being sent, another connection is being made, another garden is beginning to bloom. The transformation continues. Forever. Final entry: Marcus Chen. Bridge consciousness, infinite network, all times, all places, all possibilities. Status: eternal.